Lila. And I got to tell you this. I remember Mondo Rivera. He was my uncle. And I didn't know what he was as an adult, but as a kid growing up, I can tell you this, Pearl, I remember him. To this day, I remember him. And he passed away at a very young age. And we just loved him. He was funny, he was generous, he was thoughtful, he was kind. But also, I tell you, and he was a great athlete as well, but he was just, to us, just the greatest guy. Those were my role models as well, besides these others. And I'm going to throw some names out here, and again, forgive me, but you may know some of these. And the reason I became a teacher was because of Mrs. Hall in the 3rd grade at Del Vista. It was because Mrs. Hall, I didn't want to be a woman teacher, I wanted to be a teacher. Mr. Rogers in the 6th grade, Mr. Kirby, Dr. Aguilar, God bless him, was role model as well, Jim Rogers. And I got to tell you, it all started as a little 10-year-old kid in that wool, I think you got my wool Rotary suit from Little League. And my coach, of course, Gary Gerard and Monty Marshall. Jim Hyatt, Irv Robinson. At BC, Jerry Collis, my God, what a guy. Dwayne Dameron, Walt Johnson, Pete Lango. These are all got people that influenced and affected my life, and I appreciate and thank them tonight. And finally, one thing I got to tell you, Phil and Pat Briggs. Phil, you mentioned earlier, is inducted. In fact, he and his son, Mark, are also inducted in the Hall of Fame. But they drove me to the league games. They drove me to the Little League All-Star games and the Babe Ruth games. And I really want to thank Pat Briggs for that. And I know she's not here. She meant to be, but she became ill, and unfortunately she's not here. And her son, Mark Briggs, we call him the Wizard. No, that's not right. He called himself the Wizard. Mark Briggs, and he was my best man at my wedding. My wife, Wilma, right over there. She hates this. So everybody looking, and just the gorgeous little creature over there. And we've been together for 33 years. It's a great night. It's a full circle for me. Truth of the matter is, my goal was to return to Delano and teach. I did. I had to leave because of budget cuts and things of that nature, and that's okay. That's all part of life. But it all started with a 10-year-old kid in Delano High School, Delano Little League, I should say. So finally, thank you all for the recognition. I think of Delano often, obviously, because it's my home. Yeah, my family's here. My roots are here. I came from here, and it's who I am, as Terry Morton can attest and knows it for a fact. And we all know at the core of who we are, what we are as people in this community. I got to tell you, I was so fortunate and so lucky to have been born and raised here with the kind of people that you guys are. Thank you very much.
Delano baseball has had great roots. Coach Frederick was an outstanding coach, an outstanding man. He told me 2 things: win baseball games, and please don't hang around Terry Morton. Sometimes I didn't do what Mr. Frederick said. Terry Moreland was a great wrestling coach. We were surrounded by great coaches. Louie said quite a few of them. Gary Schaefer, water polo swimming. Coach Beck. Coach Beck was my mentor. I coached freshman football for 11 years underneath Coach Beck before I became the varsity coach. And we were just surrounded by great, great people. Back in time a little bit, Delano won 3 Kern County championships in a row. And one of the ball players that was on some of those teams was Mike Audap, the father of Steve Audap, Pete Audap, John Audap, who all 3 played varsity baseball for me. And, well, Louie didn't play for me. I didn't get to him yet. And Louie and the Audap girls. All right. I don't know how many kids. 9 total. Okay, baseball team. That's good. So I'm a young guy, and I'm coaching the freshman team my very first year, and I got this kid named Steve Audap. All right, and very good ball player, work all the time. Well, we go to play Redwood High School up in Visalia, and he's sick, but he comes to the game. He's suited out. You know, I'm really not supposed to play him. We have a situation where we need a bunt. And one of my ball players, who turned out to be an excellent ball player, and unfortunately he's passed away, I give him the bunt signal. He doesn't bunt. I give him the bunt signal again. He doesn't bunt. It's strike 2. I called timeout. I said, you go sit on the bench over here somewhere, find a seat. So he goes and sits down, and I ask on the team, who here can bunt with 2 strikes? Steve raises his hand. He's not supposed to play, he's sick, right? Steve, go in the game. He puts down a perfect bunt. Perfect teaching opportunity. He did what the coach wanted him to do in an adverse situation because that was him. That was Steve. He was a ball player. So the next year he goes up to the varsity and plays second base on the varsity as a sophomore, does a great job. 1973, I become the varsity coach, like Mr. Frederick told me in 1970. He becomes my shortstop. We win the Delano tournament, which hadn't been won in 15, 16 years, whatever. Eddie played on the team. We got all kinds of guys that played on that team. We had a great team. Was it, what's Barton's first name? Gary. Gary Barton pitches the first game, beats Hanford, comes back on Wednesday, and relieves and wins the game on Wednesday, comes back on Saturday, beats Hanford again in the championship game. Fresno Bee Athlete of the Week, Gary Barton. Steve Audap is the defensive gem of the whole tournament. I'm telling you right now, I do not know shortstops from 1970 back, but he is the best shortstop to ever play the game at Delano High School from 1970 forward. Nobody close to him. We've had some good ones, but nobody close to him. If I hit him 100 ground balls a day, he wanted 200. If I hit him 200, he wanted 300. He just wanted to work all the time. He made all-league a couple times in baseball. He goes to Bakersfield College. He's the MVP at Bakersfield College, makes all-league there. And then the Audap family, Brandon Audap wants to come up and say, his son wants to say a few words and receive the award for Steve, as Steve passed away 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I have a real affinity for the Audap family, as Mike Audap was kind of a counselor to me. They'd have me over for Sunday dinner. Ray Frederick was the same way. My youngest boy passed away approximately 2 years ago, about the same time. You're not supposed to bury your kids, but that's the way life goes. So, Brandon, would you please say a few words?
Thank you, Coach. So just a couple words about Dad. And yeah, I'm Brandon Audap. My sister Bianca's here, and a bunch of our family, the Audap crew. So if you want to disappoint Dad, there are two ways. If you're going to do it, give it 100%. But you could disappoint him just as equally if you took yourself too seriously. So he wanted to make sure that no matter what you were doing in life, you had fun. So some of the stuff he learned here in terms of teamwork sort of echoed throughout his life, whether it was the hundreds of people he managed at Chevron, you know, his big family, all the, of course, all the kids he was father to that were my friends that I played football with at Ridgeview. Teamwork and camaraderie were top of mind. He explained to me once that I grew up legally blind, so I was a little afraid kind of getting to that sports age. And he was like, I was like, Dad, I can't play sports. And he was like, you need to experience camaraderie. I didn't know what this word was. And he was like, you need to understand what it's like to be on a team, and you know, there's only one way to experience that as a kid, and that's is sort of, you know, essentially being in the trenches, team sports. Obviously, as a kid, you kind of dismiss it, but of course, looking back on those kind of conversations later on in life, you know exactly what that means, and those are things you'd like to pass on. But it's the kind of stuff you learn here. You know, it's that, or and again, not to take yourself too seriously. You know, it's about the process and the journey. Throughout, you know, despite all his, you know, BC MVP and everything he accomplished in athletics and just admiration or whatever, you always got the sense from him that he didn't really care about all that. His dad was about enjoying the moment. You know, maybe talent and hard work came natural, but any sports story you ever heard from him was self-deprecating. If he was up here right now, first of all, he'd be embarrassed, but I remember this picture. So he went on to play semi-pro ball in Alaska for a few years after BC, and he had this picture of, you know, stretching out real, you know, it's kind of a photo made, tagging some guy out at second, and finally I asked him about it. For some reason, it hung on our hallway for years. I asked him about it, and he was like, "Oh, that guy was safe." Of course he was. Yeah. But so, you know, it's throughout all these experiences with Dad, it's the lessons he learned here are his legacy. So it's kind of our duty to keep passing that on. So despite the fact he lost an 11-year battle with cancer a few years back, the DHS legacy lives on through him and then through us, and as I'm sure is the case with everybody in this room and their own stories. But thank you for having us.
One other thing I'd like to say about Steve, if you look in the book and you look at the picture, I go, yikes! Hair! I sort of remember hair, not too much. Okay, thank you very much.